This is about possible careers through college. I was watching TV last night and saw the story of a young lady who gotten into $50,000 of student loan debt in the United States because she used her student loans to travel around the world to Spain and the Maldives and China and various places, having a great time for 5 or 6 years instead of studying with the money. And now she's in her mid late 20s and has $50,000 of student loan debt. It can't be eliminated by bankruptcy. And if interest rates get high, she could easily be spending $2,000 a month on interest, not paying down the amount of the loan at all, and not have any money left over for food or housing. So um, Susie's advice to her, the lady on the TV's advice to her, was that she has to really quickly get rid of these debts as soon as possible and straighten up her life. Well, I wasn't so sure. There are lots and lots of people in Hollywood who were wild and obnoxious and deep into weird biker life or druggy life or adventuresome life or travel South America life or NGOs for poor people life or some other unique way of living for many years from their 20s. And then in their 30s, they went into acting school and became a hit in Hollywood because they were unique and they didn't look like everybody else. And they weren't just some silly, pretty face trying to be famous. Uh, Similarly, there are guys on Wall Street traders who came from weird lives of hiking the Andes Mountains and visiting Inca ruins or helping villagers in Cancun, Mexico, or south of Cancun and Cozumel, that kind of thing. And so, you're not going to be young twice, although stem cells may change that. But for most of us, we're not going to be young twice. And really, really discovering how wonderful and enjoyable and interesting the world can be is terrific motivation foundation and well worth $50,000. Now, how do you get out of it? $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year is nothing to pay if you're getting $120,000 a year, which anybody with 6 to 8 years of real serious disciplined work and poverty, a graduate student type poverty where you can only afford one ice cream cone a week or one cup of coffee a day for 6 years or 8 years. If you can do that in your 30s, then you can get out of the student loan debt trap quite easily and into a high paying occupation where you start at 120,000 a year and within 2 or 3 years you're at 270 $200,000 a year. All it takes is the ability to have tremendous motivation and the ability to live on one ice cream cone a week and one cup of coffee a day for 6 or 8 years. Now, the rule for best in the world is professional practice 6 hours a day, 6 days a week for 6 years. They had what they called the 10-10-10 rule, but recent research has poked holes in it and find it's a little bit sloppy and overstated. It's more like a 6-6-6 rule. 6 hours a day, 6 days a week for 6 years of professional practice in one field will bring you to global reputation, which means top 200 people in a field, for example. Now, so I didn't really agree with the advice that was given to this young lady to not waste her time that way and use the money that way. If she can convert that fun into deep motivation and drive, and if she can totally switch lifestyle and become a monk or a nun for 6 years of professional practice, she can get out of the debt trap trivially because $2,000 a month interest is nothing uh, compared to upper middle class and upper class jobs in this world. Uh, but there's some other paths through college I want to talk about too. One way is to invent new intellectual tools in college. That is to really be an intellectual in college and go into 5 or 6 difficult fields your first 2 years and use college to teach you how to get in and understand and read in difficult fields and see what they all lack and then invent some tools, mental tools that address the weaknesses of all the tools that you've participated in and then do everything in your life using those mental tools. Because of the web, because of software, there are kinds of tools that we've never had in the universe before, and there are ways to use those that nobody's invented yet. So there's a platform for tool invention that's much richer than anything we've had before. And invent the tools. And then the second step would be start work at 40 years old instead of 20. And every job you have between 20 and 40, let it be merely for learning the parameters of success, what's tolerated, what's not tolerated, what risks to take, what risks not to take, what compromises are worth making, what compromises are not worth making. it gives you immense power if you're not trying to please any boss until you're 40 years old. If you're really just trying to press the border of what's allowed and what's doable and what you are capable of. You'll learn a lot about what you're capable of. You'll learn a lot about how silly organizations are. You'll learn a lot about the petty ego weaknesses of bosses, and you'll learn how to use the petty ego of bosses to your own advantage. Um, and then at 40, you can get serious and actually try to make relations in an organization, build a network in an organization, and take it over. Be, the CEO of it in 10 years or so. But up until 40, being at work only as a play, as experiment, pushing the boundaries, deliberately being ridiculous, starting in a job that's low level, not managerial, identifying what the biggest problem of the organization is, designing some activity that's very intense and highly invisible and short, doesn't require a lot of resources that you can do, and then mobilizing to get support partners and supporters to do that with you, and then doing it in a few months, and then letting the CEO and the VPs be amazed by it, or the leading customers be amazed by it, and then replicating it in other parts of the organization with resources provided by powers and authorities and executives who get impressed by it. That's certainly doable in your late 20s and 30s in big organizations. Big organizations are immensely less competent than they tell you they are. And once you get them on the inside, you'll see that they are largely male monkey hierarchy zoo-like games. Of 80% of all the men spend all day long worrying about status concerns, and only a few people are worrying about actually doing what the company needs. And so it's sort of anybody who does what the company needs is astonishingly creative looking, because everybody else is trying to get promoted by fighting all their peers on these little promotion trees. Everybody's looking vertically. Nobody's looking horizontally at customers or technology developments or how the world outside offers new opportunities. The third idea is to join a big company in your 40s as opposed to a small company, because they're most likely to be the first customer of any venture that you invent or create. And network in the big company. You can be in a big companies are not very busy. They look busy, but they're not really emotionally or intellectually very busy places at all. And everybody's bored. Everybody needs entertainment. Everybody's shuffling papers and stuff, but it doesn't require much effort or intention or intensity. Just a lot of coordination. And therefore, you really have the slack, the room there to build networks, to meet people, to go and get yourself distributed widely to customers outside and suppliers outside the organization, especially these days, partners of your organization on joint projects. Build a huge network. They're going to be the customers of whatever you invent later. They'll have the money. They'll have the need. You know they'll have the need. You'll know their names and phone numbers. You know they have the need. You know what language to use to address them. Far better to work with your future customers for 5 years before you form a venture and a product than to form a venture and a product and not even know the name or phone number of a single customer and not even already be known by the customer. So you're a stranger presenting an idea. The fourth idea about building a career is the idea of becoming an educated person as a personal goal. Overcoming your initial factory settings, what your parents, your teachers, your government, your society, your gender made you between 0 and 20. And you discover that you can overcome all of those contents inside of you. That is, get rid of 90% of yourself and create new habits and routines that are better, consciously chosen from the best in history. And then by the age of 55, be an adult. That is a self-made person, a person who is not their initial factory settings. Now, 99% of people don't do that, and they're never adult. And they may drive a car, vote, have sex, smoke, and all that, but that's a government definition of adulthood. It's not a practical definition. So if you decide to be an adult, probably you discover in college that most of what's inside of you, you didn't consciously choose, and it's not very good stuff, and there's a lot better stuff out there to be. But these routines require practice, and you can't just have a new idea and make yourself better. You've got to practice new inputs, practice noticing things you don't naturally notice, practice saying things and reacting in ways you don't naturally react, create new patterns of all that. And these routines take practice, and that takes years. And so if you really work at it sincerely, you'll discover you might be able to be an adult somewhere while you're in college, where you have the best in history and the best in the contemporary world to choose from. But that's the beginning of the journey. And then after 20, 30 years of serious building of new routines and putting them inside yourself, you'll discover you have become an adult at age 55. This is what they call natural leadership and charisma. people who are educated, I'm educated. I have to, there's no way to describe it, but to say that I did become an educated person, and it 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 means that you simply are not in the routines and the cultures that everybody else around you is in, and it gives you a freedom of feeling, a freedom of thinking, and a freedom of maneuver that yet is gentle because it's effortless. So you don't have to push and fight and shove other people. You can just simply differ in a consistent way, the unthreatening way, because you're so far outside of the frameworks of the people around you that it's effortless to simply see things and nudge things differently. And you can nudge in measured ways that other people can tolerate and learn from instead of making them angry or pressured by what you do. That's the difference between an ambitious young guy, 38 years old, full of himself and telling everybody else around him how to live because he's so sure of his own rightness, and an educated person at age 55 who gets a lot more people to do lots more changing in a lot gentler ways because it's effortless for him and he's not pushing himself while pushing others because he's already done the work of getting rid of his initial factory settings. That's a fourth way. Then another way is to read 3 books a day, every day of your life. And believe it or not, it's possible. The reason it's possible is every book you read makes it exponentially easier to read a second or a third or a fourth book. If you read 20 books in one field, it's very easy to read the 21st book because about half of it you already know, and you're just scanning for the half you don't know and carefully reading that. If you read 50 books in a field, then there's only a quarter of the book that you don't already know, and then you scan for that quarter and carefully read that. And so you really can get to the point of 3 books a day. Why? Because that 1,000 books a year times 30 years is 30,000 books that other people. That's new aspects of people's behavior and reactions and possibilities you notice in situations other people don't notice. And the guy with the most frameworks, the most variety of frameworks, the most different frameworks, the most abstract frameworks, lives in a bigger world, sees more possibilities in the world, and can take actions that other people can't imagine in the world. So you actually have a bigger life and bigger world if you do that. And then finally, make your life successful on 4 fronts simultaneously. Your job is what you do for money. Your life work you do because you love it. Your hobbies you do for relaxation. Your profession you do because it's people with the same job who you can socialize with and expand the arena of your action with. And so you work on all 4 of those, making money from all 4 of those every year. And you keep plugging on all 4 of those in every week, every year, rather than getting sucked into just one of them. And that keeps you detached a little bit, gives you security a little bit, and gives you outside social resources that make you gentle in how you do things.